to this week's podcast. I'm Michelle Pascoe, and thank you so much for joining me. Each week, I either interview an amazing guest, or perhaps I'm sharing my own insights over the past 3 decades in this amazing industry, as well as being in business. This podcast is for those in the hospitality industry, but it's also so much more than that. It's for someone just like you. Perhaps you're an individual building a business, or you're just starting out building a team, or you have many people that you lead and manage. If that is so, and you are wanting to create an amazing experience for your patrons, your clients, your members, then this is the podcast for you. Welcome, everyone, to today's podcast, where I'm going to introduce the most amazing lady that I've only met in the past few months. We caught up, more than we caught up, we actually met for the first time as speakers at the Tropical Innovation Festival in Cairns. It was my first time there, and as a newbie and as a speaker, it's always wonderful to meet people that are in your world, and this lady certainly is. And then last week, we find ourselves at another conference, which was the Dietitians Conference in Brisbane, where we're on the stage again. So I'd like to introduce Tracy Sheen. She is a multi-award-winning author and the digital guide, Removing Technology Overwhelm for Small Businesses. In 2023, she travelled 120,000 kilometres, delivering 120 plus workshops to business communities across Australia, focusing on regional Queensland. Her book, AI and You, Business Reimagined, offers AI innovation insights. As a passionate small business champion, Tracy shares knowledge, advocating to government and industry for continued support and education, particularly around AI and emerging tech adoption. Her commitment to bridging the digital divide is unwavering. Tracy embodies the spirit of innovation and approachability in the digital age, helping small businesses thrive. I know you're going to love this conversation because Tracy had us laughing up at TIFF in Cairns and then once again in Brisbane, because it's an ever-changing world with AI. So welcome, Tracy. I'm so glad you're here to join us.
Thank you, Michelle. I've been really looking forward to this conversation. We always end up going down a lot of rabbit holes, don't we? So you'll have to wind me in.
We do. And, whether it's over a lovely breakfast or whether it's just, the conversations in the hallways or catching up, it's fantastic. And, so listeners, you're going to listen to this, but then you're going to probably listen to it multiple times, stop and start and rewind, so to speak. Take lots of notes because there's a lot of learning that you're going to have with this episode. Now, bios are wonderful, but I'd love you to tell a little bit more about your journey, about how you became to be this mobile, digital, and AI ecosystem enabler.
I know it's a mouthful, isn't it? It's a mouthful. It's a thing. It's a thing. Yes. It's one of those buzz phrases that, government or someone comes up with and you just go, oh yeah, let's do that. I write my own business card so I can be whatever I want to be.
You can.
So I've been doing this for like over 40 years when I really think about it. So my mum and dad were one of the first people in Australia to import electronic scales. So every time you go to Woolies or Coles or, one of the grocery stores and you're weighing your meat or your fruit and veg or that type of thing, I was pulling those apart when I was like 5, 6, 7.
Gosh.
So I've always been really kind of interested, and I guess that was mum and dad's world as well. And then fast forward, when I left high school, I started selling mobile phones in 1990. So they'd really only been in Australia for 3 years previous to me getting involved. Fax machines were still all the go, yes. Pages, and then I came in with mobile phones. From there, I kind of jumped around a fair bit, and I was fortunate enough to just land or continue in that digitization space for 30 odd years of my career. So I was part of the
Mm.
team that launched SMS technology into Australia.
Wow.
I launched several mobile networks, was part of the iPhone launch in 2008. So, that was when people were camping out around the block to get their very first iPhone. It was
Yes,
crazy.
I was one of them, not
Was
camping.
one of them. Yeah, it was crazy. I did the launch for
Yes.
that one at the Sunshine Coast with one of the retail stores, and it was just phenomenal.
Mm,
And then I moved on to become one of the federal government advisors for small business and worked in that space for a number of years. And that was where I really started working really closely one to one with small business owners,
mm,
particularly regional business owners. Um, and I found that there were, like all industries, Michelle, just certain questions that kept coming up. How do I do this? Why am I doing that? I still don't understand this. I've been burnt. I've been yada, yada, yada.
mm,
So I kind of realized that nobody was really addressing those needs. So at that point, I had a digital marketing agency that I'd been running for a few years, and the big pandemic had hit. So I took the opportunity to close the agency because I wasn't really enjoying that anymore, but I loved the training and the teaching and the educating. So I closed the agency, took 6 months to write my first book, and then launched out the other end as the digital guide. And since then, 2020, gosh, 4 years already.
yes.
I've been traveling around the countryside like a Leyland brother. I am that old, and running workshops and keynotes and helping small business and areas get up to speed with what's coming.
Yes, yeah. Look, thank you for that outline. I know we're going to probe in to a lot more of those areas, particularly with that regional Australia where so often everything is pitched to the city areas, but there are so many amazing businesses out there in, those regional areas where there may only be a handful of people in that small town into larger regional areas. So I'm looking forward to those questions in a moment. But look, let's just look at this AI where it is at the moment. For many that aren't in it all the time, like yourself and
Mm.
myself, that we're looking on social media, we're looking at AI, we're hearing about it at conferences. For the majority, it's that open AI with Chat GPT, and a few
Mm.
people have dabbled into it. But I know through our conversation last week, we were looking at, well, where do you think businesses will be in a decade? Because I think, we've had this major, the media going on the bandwagon, oh, you're all going to lose your jobs. We're all just going to be, I don't know what we're going to
Mm.
be. But of course, as we know, it's still taking time, even though it's been a few years. People are still
Mm.
educating themselves. So what are your thoughts about, where do you see AI in the next 10 years?
Look, I think the first thing that everybody needs to remember is AI has been around since the 50s.
Mm,
Okay, that was when the term was first coined, and you're already using it. So, this whole where are we going, oh my gosh, it's completely overwhelming me. You're already using it. You have been for years. If you're on any social media platform, if you watch any streaming television like Netflix or Foxtel or Stan or Amazon, or you interact with an e-commerce site, you're already utilizing AI every single day. So first things first, I guess, don't kind of, go into that panic of like, oh my gosh, this is coming so quickly. What am I going to do? You're already a master at it. You're just utilizing other people's platforms. So I think that's the first thing to kind of, really understand. If we look at, as with everything, there's always kind of, two sides to the coin, but in reality, there's, three sides to the truth. So if we look at the best estimates, McKinsey, Deloitte, those types of people are kind of saying somewhere between 25 to 50% of globally jobs will be disrupted in some way, shape, or form
mm,
through AI. Now, for the most of us that are listening into the podcast, that probably means that the stuff that we don't like doing, that monotonous kind of day to day things that you roll your eyes about because you've got to do it over and over again, that's just going to disappear.
Mm.
So to me, that means it'll actually allow us to step more into our creativity, allow us to step more into the roles within our business that we got excited about in the first place. You know,
Yes. Mm.
you got into doing what you're doing because you love connecting with people and you love, educating. You didn't sign up for the 10,000 emails that you've got to do to respond to everyone. So I think that's one of the nice things for me is it will free up creativity, increase our productivity,
Mm.
allow us to connect better and in better ways with our
Yes.
clients, and have those resources and assets ready to go. So I think that's a real positive. I do believe that AI itself won't be responsible for job losses. I think whenever there's a big change, we look at social media coming out or, going back to mobile phones or back in time, there's always that period where you've got people clutching their pearls going, oh my God, this is going to be the end of these jobs as we know it. But
Mm.
actually, what we always see is that some jobs may go by the wayside, but it creates a bunch of other stuff
Yes.
that
Yes.
we don't realize or we don't even know. We can't imagine what it is at the time.
Mm.
So I do see that we're going to go through this evolution of, potentially there's going to be roles for people that can repair the robotics and upgrade the AI and embed the systems and those types of things. So I think we'll go through, to use an old corporate term, there'll probably be a little bit of turbulence over the next few years
Yes.
as we see how things roll out and what that means for us as business owners in particular industries.
Mm.
But ultimately, I think it's going to allow the time and the space to step back into what it is that we actually enjoy doing.
Yes. Yeah. So it's to be mindful of it, but discover it. And I know that one of the words that you were using last week at the conference is just stay curious. Don't shy away from it. It is there to help us. It was quite funny. I was reading over the weekend. I just saw a quick little headline about how to shop. And I'm thinking, I thought about that idea. It must have been 20, 30 years ago. And I'm thinking, I say it to so many of the checkout people is, here we are, we take things off the shelf, we put them in the trolley, then we take them from the trolley onto the counter, then we take the counter back into the trolley. And I've said it so many times over the decades, there has to be some sort of scanning machine that you could scan, put it straight in your trolley, then you pay for it, and off you go. And there it was. And I thought, oh, another $1 million idea gone. But anyway, we'll move on.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all about those things, isn't it? That's
Yeah,
just going
it
to make
really is.
our life a lot easier, as well as, yeah, technology in booking and all sorts of things that we can do at any time of the day or night to save us time and
Mm-hmm.
allow us to use our brains and our own skill set in so many other ways. Now, regional areas, it's funny when you're saying AI, we've known about it for decades, since the 50s. Well, I'm a country girl, so as far as I was concerned, AI was artificial insemination. So so when everybody started getting on the bandwagon about AI, I'm thinking, oh, this is interesting. So how did you approach that comment when you're out there in regional areas and you're banging on about AI? Did you ever get anybody in the audience thinking, wait on, I thought I was here about my bull instead of your...
It's funny you say that. I do work with quite a few of the cattle industry,
Mm.
and I grew up in Casino, northern New South Wales, beef capital of New South Wales. Some would argue beef capital of Australia, but we won't go into that, or we'll have people from Rockhampton emailing you in disgust. So yes, I learnt very early on, and again, being from Casino, if I go into a cattle area or a sheep area or something like that, I will always have an image of a bull or a ram or something with it's not that sort of AI. So I learned pretty quick that it's again it's that assumed knowledge, right? We
Yes.
go in and we think, oh, everybody knows what this means, but actually, check your own understanding.
Very much so. So why did you choose regional areas? Apart from growing up in the country there in Casino, and you've had many years of working with very high influential organizations, what made you turn towards those regional areas with your own business, Tracy? Mm.
Yeah, well, as you said, I grew up in regional. I still choose to live in regional Australia like you, Michelle.
Mm.
30% of us choose regional Australia to live, work, and play. And around 30% of GDP of Australia comes from regional Australia,
Yes.
right? But what I learnt really early on that always stuck with me back in 1990 when I was selling mobile phones is we couldn't get decent education or decent trainers for love nor money.
Yes.
The expectation was that we would travel to the metro areas.
Yes.
And honestly, that's just not doable for a lot
No.
of people. If you're running a farm or you're running a club or you're running a pub or you're running a B&B or a retail outlet, anything, and you're based in, somewhere where it's an 8-hour drive to get to a metro area, well, let's look at the cost of fuel for one. Let's look at the time out from your business. That's 3 days, not one day, because you've at least got to travel there and travel back. You've got accommodation. You've got, all of those things. And I went, well, why should we be impacted for choosing where we live? So
Yes.
that was really the big deciding factor for me. Don't get me wrong, I do a lot of work in Metro Australia, but
Mm.
it's always been just a sticking point for me of like, why should I have to travel?
Mm.
Why can't we get good people to come out and actually really get to understand
Yes. Yes.
what it takes to live, work, and play in regional areas?
Yeah. So, and then that's a really good point, that why do they need to come to us when we can possibly go to them and seek that out? So how is AI then impacting and that whole space about technology, with we've had the NBN, et cetera, et cetera. It's out there, but how do you see that impact with the regional areas? Are they is it as easy as it is here in Sydney? Although, mind you, I think I've had some places in Sydney that's got worse internet than I think, Mongolia. Truly. So, I've heard Mongolia's got excellent, excellent.
I was going to say, I hope you've done your facts there, Michelle.
I actually had my business coach, Tina Tower. She was traveling the world. And one of my private coaching sessions, she was in Mongolia. It was perfect. She was in
Hilarious.
this yurt. And somebody was actually saying to me last week that they traveled to Mongolia and they'd found that the internet was phenomenal. So we could pick
Isn't
up some tips. But
it? Yeah,
how,
exactly.
but how do you see about that technology with regional areas compared to the inner city?
We we have a bigger problem than just adopting emerging technology, and that comes down to the connectivity issues.
Right.
So it's just really poor, to be frank.
Mm.
I'm in Toowoomba, that's where my bed is. Although, as you pointed out, 120,000 k's and 200 days away from home last year. I say I have a bed in Toowoomba, but I was in Western Downs, so an hour from where I live. I couldn't do a Zoom call,
Yeah.
right? I didn't have enough bandwidth to be able to do a Zoom call, and that's an
Mm.
hour from Australia's second largest inland city.
Yeah.
So that's the bigger piece I think that needs to be addressed first, because we've got a digital divide as it is between, I can jump on a Zoom call and have a great conversation versus I've got clients that still have to drive 20 minutes to be able to log on and do Xero,
Yes.
right? Or access their accounting platform. So that's the bigger piece.
Mm.
Once you overcome that, then you've got the challenge of the average age of a business owner in Australia now is 50.
Mm.
63% of us are aged over 45. So that means we didn't grow up with technology. It's
Yeah.
happened to us. It's one more thing we've had to figure out and adopt and adapt along the way. So
Mm.
where do we learn this stuff? How do we learn it? Who do we trust? All that kind of stuff. So we finally get hooked up to the NBN, or we finally get decent internet. Hooray. And now what?
Yes.
Like, what does that mean? and it was interesting because I was chatting to the guys from MBN and they were saying to me that they call it a tech flip, right? Where they go in and they actually fiber to the premises of a town. And they said the biggest uptake they see within 3 weeks of them upgrading a town is people start streaming Netflix.
Right, right.
So
Mm,
entertainment leads the way, but there's
mm.
no education for these people to go, well, that's great. Now you can keep your kids and yourself occupied. But hang on a minute. It also means that now you've got opportunities with e-commerce. Now
Yes.
you've got opportunities, with cloud-based, SaaS-based services that you didn't have 2 months ago. But nobody is following through with that education piece. So
Mm,
that's a huge thing because now not only are we saying, hey, you've got to adapt AI and, there's all this other stuff coming down the pipeline, but by the way, you got to have a decent internet connection first. So then don't get me started on, they don't turn over their devices often enough. So there's big cybersecurity issues.
mm.
So, there's this whole piece that is really going to come to a bit of a crescendo, I think, in the next few years.
Mm.
Starlink and satellite has been great.
Yes.
And I have Starlink on my caravan now, and it's amazing.
Mm.
It was not set up for the Southern Hemisphere, so the fact that it works for us is just a bonus. But you've got the people that are selling something like Starlink and are saying, well, it can only be for personal use because if you sign up for your business, you don't have the warranty and the implications then if anything for it. So then people panic and go, oh, well, I can't sign up for it. It's not. So there's a big education piece that needs to follow through.
Mm.
Um, and some of these people are running amazing businesses,
Yes.
turning over huge amounts, impacting, positively impacting their own region economically, socially, all the rest of it, that are at big risk.
Yes, yeah. And I have heard that Starlink is very good. I know my daughter used it when she was traveling her caravan over in WA just for personal, but also for business. It was just that connection if you needed it to be. So
Mm.
when we look at all that information that's happening and with AI and with this technology, we then start to think about the robot. And I remember
Mm, mhm,
reading
mhm,
Isaac Asimov's books, I,
mhm.
Robot, and read all of them. And I still have them somewhere in a bookcase. I've got that many. I love reading. And I,
Yeah.
and I used to think, oh, there'll be a time where these robots will look like us. They will be performing like us, but it will still come down to the human who programs them to whatever they do. But of course, as we know in a number of robot books, the robot then starts to have its own brain and whatever it does takes over the world, etc. Last week, when we were at the dietitians conference, you put up a video about a robot where the gentleman was speaking to it, was picking up the apple, it was identifying what was in the garbage bin for trash, etc. How close are we? And can you explain a little bit more about that robot video? But how close do you think we are to actually having robots? And this is different to the ones that will pick up your bags now in a hotel that they're looking at and that but these robots, or our vacuum cleaners, these robots are based on a human form. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. So the reason that the majority of robots are being made in human form is because the world is designed bipedally,
Mm,
right? So it would be much easier if they could just create four-legged ones or, something else because they could get around easier, they could do all of that kind of stuff. But the way that our world has been structured is for humans, is for two-legged. We're upright. We move bipedally. So that's why the robots are being created that way.
right.
So the video that you're referring to that I played is from a company called Figure, which went into collaboration with OpenAI, who are the company behind ChatGPT. So it's a amalgamation of a large language model, or you might have heard the phrase LLM, which is large language model, um, and the robot. And the outcome was Figure, was the one that I played. Now, the really interesting thing with that, and I'm happy to share the link that you can put in the notes so people can have a look. This is a few months old now, so they've actually upgraded Figure to Figure 2.0. But the really interesting thing is there's a moment where the guy says to the robot, "Can you pass me something to eat?" And the
Mm.
robot passes him an apple. And at the end, he says, "So how do you think he did?" And the robot says, "Well, um, you know, the apple found its owner." And it actually says, "Well,
Mm.
Now, that's really, it's a small thing that kind of probably goes through to the keeper for a lot of people,
Mm.
but it's really significant because it was not programmed for that.
Right.
So the fact that the robot with the AI combined has picked up on human speech, that
Mm.
when it's thinking, its thought process fills in with filler words like
Mm.
to make it more human like. So
Yes.
that I think is really interesting because that means that we're already on the pathway of these robotics or AI or crossovers being able to recognize what is going to make us more comfortable interacting with them.
Yes. Mm.
And the people that are building them don't know why it's doing it because
Mm.
there's no beneficial outcome for the robot to do that. It could stay silent while the process is running, it doesn't
Mm.
need to do it. The other thing that it did is it pushes the basket back to the guy once it's put the dishes and things in. Now, again, it wasn't programmed for that.
Oh.
It has recognized by watching and absorbing all of the learnings that typically as humans, if we're doing something, we will push or pass or hand over the object to the other person. So
Right.
rather than just leave it there, it's gone, oh, okay, well, humans obviously like, there you go. So it's pushed it
Yes.
across. So a couple of really interesting things for me that I think the thing that really flagged to me as not a concern, but again, like just being mindful is how did it know to do that when it hasn't been programmed? Like it's
Yeah.
already kind of passing that up. So how do I think it's going to impact? What do I think is going to happen? We're at a convergence now.
Mm.
So we're in the middle of what Amy Webb refers to as a tech super cycle,
Mm-hmm.
which is AI, biotech, and connected wearables. So if you think of biotechnology as things like your smartwatch, or I wear an Aura ring, sleep devices, those types of things, they're biotech as an example. And then you've got your wearable technologies, which are things like, well, again, your ring, but also they're building sensors into outfits now for athletes to get biometrics. They've got, the visors, all of that type of thing. But underpinning all of that is AI. So because of that, as one area, say medical, is working on a particular thing, the benefits can loop in to the other sectors. So in isolation, AI, biotech, and connected wearables are three standalone silos.
Wow.
But as the information or as the learning, as the knowledge comes out of one, it spins off and allows the other areas to bypass those learnings and like make really big leaps.
Yes.
So that's what I think we're going to see over the next wee period of time is the next big step for me that I see is the big convergence between AI and robotics. It's already here. There are Chinese companies that can produce those bipedal walkabout robots now for $20,000 USD. Cheap as chips. South Korea have been trialing AI enabled dolls, which don't get me started about how creepy that is. But anyway, for aged care that have significantly reduced loneliness and depression.
Wow.
So when we look at globally, we're in an aging population. We can't get humans to do the roles that we need to,
Yes.
nor do we have the population. I think very quickly, I turned 53 this year. I'm pretty convinced by the time I end up needing aged care assistants, I'll have a robot, and it'll know my medical history. It'll know all of that kind of stuff. Bring it on. Bring it
Yes.
on. The only thing I can see is, you may, depending on whether you're a self-funded retiree or whether you're a government
Yes.
retiree, you may end up with the robot that walks into a wall, falls over, gets back up, and, versus the one that can drive the car for you and take you to doctor's appointments and do all of that kind of stuff. But certainly, within the next 30, 40 years,
It'd be just
it's going to
amazing.
be an everyday occurrence. Yeah.
Yeah. And they don't have to be Chucky the doll. So they're going to be something that we can all use. And it's just got me thinking, all those things that we take for granted while we are able-bodied and have the use of a car, etc., that it can make such a difference when you're sitting in a nursing home, or, as we know, there aren't enough spaces in nursing homes and the affordability.
Correct.
Many governments around the world are wanting you to stay at home and get the care there. But once again, that's
Yeah.
hard. Loneliness is our third biggest killer in first world countries. Having something
Yes.
that we could go and get our prescriptions, our medicine, would make such an impact. It is just
Cook
phenomenal.
simple meals, make the bed, go for a walk with you, have a conversation,
Yes, yeah.
well within our lifetime.
Mm.
Well within our lifetime.
Would be, yeah, it would just be remarkable. And I know you were talking about that robot who then was starting to interpret how we interacted as a human, pushing it forward, and she said, saying and but you also made a point at the conference about AI, and when you thank it and are polite to chat GPT, it is actually, what did you say, it was 40%?
40%. Yeah.
Can you
Yep. So
explain
on
that a little bit
average,
more?
40%. So if you're interacting with a large language model like ChatGPT, and by interacting I mean, you're using it day to day to help you write social media posts or create a blog or do a checklist or anything like that. If you say please and thank you to it, so just use your manners that, mum taught you to. Over time, statistically, they've found a 40% increase in the quality of the responses that it will give you. Now, again, here's the weird thing, they don't know why.
Yes, yeah. Well, I always say please and thank you and say that's excellent. I'll come back and go, oh, that's great. Glad you like it. If you need us, just, I think, right, okay.
I also have a theory, and I think I said it at the conference. This is my dark sense of humor. I'm a Doctor Who fan, so I always figure that if the AI overlords do become sentient and decide to overtake humanity, I want them to be able to recognize me and recognize that I was always polite to them, and
Perfect.
therefore not turn me into a Cyberman or some kind of slave, and just allow me to exist.
Yes, I'm with you. Love Doctor Who, Tom Baker, and as long as we're not attacked by the Daleks, we'll be fine. So
Absolutely, absolutely,
and there's nothing wrong with being polite and courteous, as we all should be, whether it's a robot
absolutely.
or whether it's a person. Now,
Yes.
Tracy, you have a book, The End of Technophobia, and
Mhm.
soon to be released, The AI and New Business Reimagined. What will you be sharing in your new book? And I'll certainly be putting a link to your website where they can purchase your existing book, The End of Technophobia, which I think is a fantastic title. But tell us about this new book. Because everything is changing so rapidly, who's this book for and when will it be on the shelves?
So the first book, The End of Technophobia, was really practical. So there was I designed it around the old dummies guide books, right? Lots of
Right. Yes.
screenshots, and lots of, oh, I just need to know about LinkedIn. So you just have a look at LinkedIn,
Mm.
look at the screenshots, make sure you're doing what you need to do, close the book and walk away. The new book, AI and You, because things are moving so quickly, is more of a mindset shift. So more of a framework around what do you need to be considering and how can you apply a bit of a framework to your business so
Mm.
you can be maximizing the opportunities as they come out. I don't talk about any particular pieces of tech in there, simply because by the time the book goes to print, the likelihood half of them are going to be bankrupt or obsolete. So it's really about that mind shift thinking that needs to go behind where everything's going. I've got a weekly newsletter for here's what's hot this week, here's what you need to check out,
Perfect.
all of that kind of stuff. But the book is really about, okay, this is how we've been doing business for the last 50, 100 years.
Mm.
What does that leap take for us to be looking at the new way of, or reimagine our business?
Yeah. So what's the link to that newsletter, Tracy?
I'll shoot the link and you can put it in the podcast notes. But the newsletter is just called AI and You. So I just keep the theme running, and I do a monthly
Perfect.
30-minute webinar as well. That's just it's a bit of a take on everything that I'm reading, but then digesting it through the lens of a business owner.
Mm.
What does that even mean? Because there's a lot of tech talk or jargon out there, but what does that actually mean? Like, why do I need to know that Figure have just released their new robot? How's that impacting me as someone that works in a pub or
Yes.
an Airbnb or a retailer?
Perfect. Excellent. Now, we've talked about AI, where it is, where it has been. What about in business itself, whether it's a regional, a small business, or a large organization? Do you see any emerging trends in technology that you believe will certainly shape the future of business and our personal lives?
Oh, gosh. All right. Get your arms and legs inside the vehicle and hold on for this one, Michelle. Here we go. So I've talked about, I think the next big thing is the AI robotics
Mm.
leap. Not hard for them given they've got the robotics and they've got the large language model now to combine them and train them in very specific areas. So, two really big leaps that I'm waiting for. One is obviously general intelligence, which is where, that next evolution in AI that Ray Kurzweil, who's been around forever and a day, actually since the 50s, is kind of proposing that will be 2029. Elon Musk is saying 2026. Either way, it's close. And AGI is where instead of it being a very narrow intelligence, so being able to say to ChatGPT now, I'm writing a marketing blog on such and such, help me, and it's really good at that one piece.
Yes.
AGI or artificial general intelligence is where it is good at kind of everything.
Mm.
So it actually supersedes what we could do. So that's the next big leap that everyone's waiting for, and that's got everyone kind of clutching their pearls about what does that mean? Because is that
Yes.
the moment when it becomes sentient,
Mm.
and that's a bigger discussion, needs wine. But I think the next big piece is spatial awareness or spatial computing.
Mm.
We're starting to see, a lot of these visors coming out.
Yes.
And a few years ago, all the talk was the metaverse. That's not disappeared. It's just been working kind of in parallel. So if you imagine now you go into a retailer and you are getting text messages and email marketing directly to you to say, hey, here are your weekly specials based on, your previous shopping history, etc., etc. Imagine that you have your device on because it's part of your everyday life, whether they're glasses or whatever, and the AI can recognize that, oh, Michelle spent a considerable amount of time looking at this range of products.
Yes.
So
Yes.
now it can start to feed that information straight into your field of view.
Mm.
And it can be sourcing that data to know where it needs to go and what it needs to advertise it to you. So that's just one way. But I think
Mm.
spatial computing from a tourism, from a retail, from, that has a lot of interesting applications, good
Yeah.
and bad.
Mm. It's going to be a very interesting view. You know, part of my business for the last 30 years has been research through my own proprietary software, and I'm part of the mystery shopping providers of Asia Pacific and, you know, throughout the world. And it's an amazing association. So I go to a lot of research companies, and would have to be at least 10 years ago now. There was a chap from Venezuela who had a set of glasses that he was just creating. So this is, you know, very, very early stages about that eye pattern recognition. So going into a store, seeing where people's eyes were looking, and then that would start what they were looking at. Was starting to have pop up of, out of those 25 items, the eye, wherever they were going, that's going to be what we can be promoting. So then they would start sending them more information on that particular product. So as I said, that was the very early stages. And thinking about it now, what you're saying, it's just the more we have a lot of information on our customers. But what I disappointed about, and I'm sure you are with somebody with AI, is that we don't mine it enough. Now, I'm not meaning let's just completely bombard them with advertising, but let's make it really clear, bringing that data alive and targeting it very specifically for our clients, customers, guests, so then they're informed about what the product or the service that we have that will speak directly for them. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's going to become more and more personalized.
Yes. Yeah.
So, you know, right now, with everything that you're connected to the FBI, I was listening to a really interesting podcast. The FBI can basically, anyone in the States can basically track to within about 5 centimeters.
Wow.
They know what you're going to buy next. They know, you know, where you're going to go, all of that type of stuff. So it's when you start to bring all of that information, as you said, to life, I shouldn't be still getting newsletters from organizations promoting fishing gear to me
Yes. Yes.
when that's no interest to me. So instead of going really, really broad, they'll be able to go, oh, hang on a minute. We know that you were just in Ballina in your caravan and you're interested in X, Y, Z.
Yes.
Let's just send you that information. So much better, richer, deeper conversations to be had with clients.
Yes.
Which also in turn, you know, is great for suppliers, is great for, you know, everyone. The flip side, of course, that we need to be mindful of is privacy is the new currency.
Yes.
So just being very, very mindful of, as business owners, what's our ethical responsibilities? How transparent are we willing to be? And how do we plan on utilizing that information on our clients? But as a consumer, also being aware that we've already basically traded our privacy.
Yes, yes, yeah. I don't know whether you caught up with the latest news last night, and I'm been racking my brain trying to remember what it was, but it's happened here in Australia. It's the first. It's going global for first responders. So if you are lost or hurt, you can now. I'm trying to think of what the name of the company was because it was only launched yesterday, as I said, globally. So you can go on your phone. The first responders, whether it be, you know, police, ambulance, fire, will know exactly where you are. They can actually see through your phone camera where you are. You can rotate. It is unbelievable, but they say very clearly, we cannot get any data off your phone. If you want to stop the filming, you can. This is all about helping you. Once again, Australia was way out there in front of anywhere else in the world with this amazing technology. And I don't know, did you catch the news? It was only really brief, and I cannot think of the life of me what it was called.
Don't know the name of the company, but it's probably off the back of Apple and their iPhone launched, you know, emergency calling and fall detectors and things.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter whether you're in or out of range, you're able to reach out and it will automatically send GPS coordinates and things.
Yeah.
So
And
this is probably just one step on now, being able to access cameras and do that type of thing. So that's really
it was
interesting.
It was an Australian company, and I just
Love
thought,
that.
wow, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, we've been chatting, and this has been so interesting. How do you continue to learn and study with AI in such a fast-moving world? You know, this is your world, but how do you keep up, and then how do we, the common person, keep up?
Yeah, look, it's part of my morning routine. So first thing I do of a morning is, over my coffee, I sit and I have certain people that I follow. So I'll,
Mm.
read the news, my news, not,
Yes.
mainstream media, but AI, emerging tech news. I have certain YouTube channels that I follow. So I read, watch, and listen first thing of the morning.
Mm.
And then I do the same in the evening as well. So twice a day, I'm usually kind of plugged in. Plus, I'm always reading, and I'm always, you know, I follow certain people, and from there they'll spark me off. So, people
Yes.
I've mentioned like Ray Kurzweil and Amy Webb, those types of people, Dr. Catherine Ball, and from there I'll kind of go, oh, that's interesting, and then I'll go down a rabbit hole on, something particular. But how does the common folk, how
Mm.
do they, like, how does everyone else saying, you then follow people like
Yes.
me or like you, Michelle, or,
Yes.
people in your, not just in your industry though, like I would highly encourage everybody to connect with at least one or two people in a really completely
Yes.
random
Yeah,
industry,
I agree.
because
Mm.
it's often things that are happening in there that you go, oh my gosh, that's really interesting. I
Mm.
wonder what would happen if. And that's where it comes down to staying curious, right? So 15 minutes a day, I say to my guys, that's all it takes, 15 minutes.
Mm.
So, over lunch, when you're sitting down with a cuppa and taking a break, that's when you want to, check a YouTube channel out, listen to a podcast,
Yeah.
read a newsletter, do something, and ask yourself, what if?
Mm. I've loved this conversation, Tracy. I know we could talk for hours more. I'd love to have you back when you actually launch your next book, and let's have another conversation about that. But would you mind just saying, what's your website? I know we'll put the link in, but if you can say it verbally.
It's thedigitalguide.com.au.
Perfect. So that's thedigitalguide.com.au where they can reach you, Tracy, directly, because not only does Tracy do workshops in regional areas and city, doesn't matter where it is, here in Australia or globally, but she is also an amazing professional speaker. So by all means, go on the website, check her out, get her into your business, share her with your community, because the information that you've shared, not only here today, but in the past two conferences that I've seen you speak at, Tracy, is phenomenal. But you know what, even more so, it's really easy to understand.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. That's a huge compliment, because it's something that I've irks me when people speak in jargon and
Yes.
things.
Yes.
So back to the AI thing, it ain't artificial insemination. So just make sure that you speak the language of your people.
Certainly. It's been wonderful having you on the podcast. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. Appreciate you.
Okay. Bye. Thank you so much for joining me on this week's podcast. I do hope there was some moments of aha, insights, tips, and some action steps for you to take in your business or organization. I love being in this industry. So the more that you can get the word out about this podcast, because it really is an honor and a privilege to have so many amazing guests on the podcast, that we need to get the word out there. So please share. A review would be wonderful. And if you'd like to reach out and learn more about what I do and my signature program for the leadership development middle management movement, please have a look at the website www.michellepasco.com. Take care, everyone. Bye.